Hello, everybody. Away we go again. Would you believe it's episode magnificent 7 of The Good, The Bad and The Rugby. See what I've done there. No guests this week. We thought we'd have a bit of downtime and just a bit of a catch-up between the three of us. Hask and Tins along for a little bit of good old-fashioned rugby chat. It's been a big weekend of games. A lot of talking points in the sport right now. Noticeably, of course, the breaking news on Tuesday around the future of crowds at sporting events. We'll get into that as well. And given that he's front and centre, we'll give a bit of a plug, a free opportunity for Hask to flog a load of his books, which actually I've started reading. It's very good. There's a lot to talk about, though, off the back of that. Because if you haven't heard, he's got an autobiography coming out. How are sales tracking at this point? We're going to come on to it in more detail, but has anyone bought it yet?
Well, good. It's going all right, actually. I try not to look at them because you can get a little bit excited or disappointed, but it's interesting, you do a Good Morning Britain and you're suddenly number 2 in the Amazon charts and it dips back down again. I'm just quite comfortable that when people start reading it, hopefully they'll enjoy it. Like, I know you're being very nice because you'd hardly come on and say the book was gash, but you text me a few times about laughable bits. I've got a few close friends that I've just said, listen, I don't care what you think about it, read it, just let me know, and they've all come back with similar sort of stuff. So I'm excited for people just to get it in their hands, see what they think. People who hate me, people who like me, read it and make your own mind up.
Nobody hates you. I think those days are gone. I think we need to change the narrative a little bit. Lord, have you got a book stop yet through the post from Hask, or are you just still waiting? You didn't sign it, which I thought.
I did ask him to send me one. I haven't got it yet, so I would expect a signed copy, though, please, Hask.
The thing with the signed copies is that I don't have them. You know what's really interesting about people who I was talking to Dylan Hartley about this, and we're going to come on to stuff about the rugby world later on. There's this like really quaint impression of rugby because of like the positivity of like grassroots and everything else, that I've got a stockpile of books here and that I'll be able to send them out. And my favourite bit is when someone goes, I've ordered something from Amazon, I wonder where my order is. It's like, you do not understand how the world works. I think rugby's great because it makes the fans and people feel there's no barrier. Lads, I'm not running a bookshop. I haven't got any copies of books. I don't know about your orders. I can't help you, so don't bother.
Tins, any excitements? What's happening in your world?
No, I just focus on the one podcast. We've obviously got fires in the oven. Is that right?
Fires in the oven's not a good thing. Irons in the fire.
Can we do a show where you just get sayings wrong? I think I'd be quite good at that.
I love that.
I did those last week as well.
I did. So we've did a bit of the work on that today. Yesterday was Daddy Daycare. I was supposed to be with Hask on the weekend. He had far much more fun and completely social distancing parties, but all good. Ready to crack on. Enjoyed the rugby at the weekend, and it makes for some fascinating games this weekend too.
Alex, also, I got to DJ for the first time in ages at a socially distanced university DJ gig when they were in this pod and they had like tables of 5. And obviously when you DJ, your whole objective is to get people on their feet dancing. But every time I did that, security would come over like, shut down. It's the weirdest world out there. Like, people are so desperate to have a party and a bit of fun, but you just can't. You're not allowed.
Were there barriers around each pod?
No, it was really nice. They had like sofas and drinks and bits and pieces, but it was just nice to see how they made it work. But honestly, by the end of it, the lads were getting a bit drunker and they would get up and security would bollock them. As soon as security would turn around, they'd be, dancing all over the place. I thought for 1 minute, some guy turned up in Northampton stash. So I absolutely started to get into him in the pre-interview, the Q&A. Turns out it wasn't Northampton stash, just a shirt that looked a lot like it. So I had to backtrack quite quickly.
That basically sums up your knowledge of your old club.
Yeah, exactly.
God, it's a weird world out there. You've nailed that. Let's focus on the weird world of rugby right now. Actually, we had quite a lot of debate generated off the back of our show last week with Stuart Hogg. And it was great to have him on. We were talking about superstars in the game. Does rugby need superstars? Is rugby the sport that builds itself around the team? We were sort of mentioning the likes of Tiger Woods and LeBron, Messi, etc. And actually some very interesting feedback came back. Lots of people talking about Faf de Klerk at the moment. Certainly the finest hair in sport, one of the finest 9s too. Sonny Bill obviously transcended rugby for a while. Sia Khaleesi, we spoke about. Even 1 or 2 people talking about Israel Folau. Make of that what you will. You weren't here last week, Hask. Global superstars. Have we got any? Do we need them? Is rugby a sport that will grow without them?
Look, I think rugby, has the potential to grow. I think it needs characters. I think that, I've said this a number of times before, and I'm not bashing rugby because I love it, etc. But you've got to be very honest about these things. There's no point, sort of dressing it up. Rugby's a very small sport, and everybody who's in rugby thinks rugby is the greatest thing ever. But you step outside the street, step down the road, and they know the All Blacks, they know the haka, They may know a couple of England players, but we don't have that level of stars. And I think the other issue off the back of it, I mean, Johnny Wilkinson, Dan Carter, I think for some people, these kind of people, got themselves outside of the bubble. My concern is that obviously the sport has to grow and people have to watch it, but there's also the brands and activation around it that people put you on posters or billboards. It's always quite dry, quite sanitized, because a lot of people in rugby, especially at the top, are old heads employed from within who were legends of the game but came from a completely different era, don't understand how to commercialise, don't understand that there's an appetite, especially that social media is created, to get behind the scenes, to understand characters, to have people, to have interests outside and around the game. It's not just about match day, it's about the training, the preparation, what do they do, the characters, how people feel about it. I remember Lawrence Dallaglio, after they won the World Cup, got put on to do a Vaseline campaign. It was quite a big brand. Not in that way, but it was like when Vaseline started to release a face thing, and it was a big moment. He was on billboards all over London, but it was him, classic, shitty, cheesy, handoff covering half his face like that, and you couldn't see who it was. I think some of the best stuff is done. I saw, Dove Men putting it all in big, Waterloo Station. You can clearly see these players, but without context, without brands really putting them out there, without the appetite to watch this rugby, it's just going to get lost. And I think the Tiger Woods, LeBrons and Messi are obviously once in a generation kind of players. I don't think rugby, being a team sport, necessarily attracts those people. I would have thought Sonny Bill Williams would be up there, but he's got the curse of the humble Kiwi, just keep the head down. So probably, even though he's transcended and well known, he still probably doesn't have that punchy personality, because he's all about, God or Allah, whatever it is, and himself. It's hard. And then you look at other guys, and I think Sia Khaleesi is probably in South Africa. What he's done, there's been so many documentaries about he's I think heading towards that direction. But Faf de Klerk, I mean, he's an unbelievable player, but he's only relevant to people who watch rugby. Where else do you see him? What else does he do? Does he do stuff on social media? He got great personality? I don't know. I've never heard him speak.
He's only relevant if you like budgie smuggler photos.
Yeah.
Let's just imagine, if going back to your question from last week, Alex, is if a rugby player gave the interview that LeBron gave for not being MVP, the whole sport would hate him.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well,
and actually, just for context, what did LeBron say?
My gist is he got beaten again into second place for MVP, and I'm not sure if he's ever been MVP. He's always got beaten, and he just was like, "This is just pissing me off now. I'm just pissed off." Joke, I'm pissed off. And he said "pissed off" about 35 times in an interview. He's like, I'm not knocking the guy who won it. I'm just pissed off. I mean, I do all this. I'm just pissed off. And I understand he's angry because he feels that he probably was the best or whatever. And whether his stats back that up, I don't know NBA well enough to be able to write on that. But obviously, he's a legend of the game. And if he hasn't won the MVP, which you would all expect him to do, then it just shows how good he is and how well he promotes himself, to how good his PR is. But then if you look at that just a one-off interview, you go, well, I wouldn't really want to play with him. But this is what Hogg was saying last week. He's saying that you never sort of stick your head up, because rugby is one of those truly games where an individual can't win you a sport. I don't think there's many other sports out there where you can say that one individual can't solely win you a game. Yes, they can do a wonder try, but if everyone's off their game for the rest of it, you still lose. Whereas if Jordan's on fire, he carries you and wins you a game. Just give him the ball. Football, you can just give it to Messi and he'll pull the strings, as long as someone else can either knock it in or he'll score whatever, he's 600 of what he scored in his career. I think rugby is very unique, and it is very humble, and that's the beginnings it's come from.
Actually, LeBron's actually been MVP 4 times, I think. So therefore, his fury, I think 2012, his last title, but his anger, therefore, is even more sort of extraordinary, given that he has achieved.
I do remember, now you said that, he did say, I know I've won it 4 times, but obviously, as you said, 2012, obviously you strive to that, but then what rugby players have is the humility that when they don't get it, it's not their fault. He even admits that he has no decision making in it. He's happy the way he's playing, but he gets upset that someone else picks someone different.
I agree with everything Tins is saying. I think I echo that. There aren't the superstars. That's why everyone writes for Penny Thouthau and Joe Roccococo and all those guys, because they had those magical moments. The Carlos Spencers, the banana kicks, the back door. They were, individual stand-up moments. Jason Robinson, captured the imagination. I do think that, when I came through my career, I got massively criticised for doing anything outside of rugby. And I got called on by, and I talk about it in the book, Brian Moore said to me, he's never met me, never seen it, never spoken to me, but I had my own website and I obviously was some sort of arsehole and there's a bit more to the story than that. But it just, with that mentality, you're never going to grow. And the problem is that with the rugby fans, I think the best thing about rugby is the closeness you have to grassroots and the closeness you have to the fans. But it also becomes quite quaint because they feel that they have ownership. They feel that they can voice stuff and everyone gets so irate about that. They want characters, but then they don't want characters. In a team, I want people to be individual. Yes, you don't want, the kind of reaction that LeBron has necessarily, but part of that admires it. If he backs it up and he's as good as LeBron is, I quite admire that. I just think some of the fans, you see some of the fan forum stuff that's written about us on here and everything else. It's just the kind of person that watches rugby sort of just wants to have a lovely experience, a few pints, a bit of an adventure, but don't let anyone steal the limelight. And then the opposition will obviously be like him and, so-and-so's a showboat, etc. I don't know. I just don't think it's bred. And I think the way we control it, the way the RFU panic about sanitising everything so there's nobody's going to get offended. Clubs have the same responsibility. I just don't know if it breeds that because, you have one bad game and you've talked it up, you're dust.
We talked about last week. I was sort of saying it needs to start at grassroots. So if you go back to 2003, you win a World Cup, you can't have a better platform to then change the game and change. Everyone I met on the trains about who were involved with local clubs said there were so many kids coming through, 600, 700. But then you've got to entice them to stay there, and that starts at the grassroots. Then that grows the fan base, and then the more fans that are watching, the quicker that you excel. And I still think we're in a unique market where the UK is just different to a global superstar football. Everyone can pick up a ball and play it. I think that puts them on a different level. In America, elite level sport is the pinnacle and the goal. Whereas I don't think elite level rugby is for kids. It's football, and then they either find it later in life, and then it sort of makes your fan base a bubble. How do you then break out of that? Hask's been banging on about this for years, about making the fan experience at games and everything else, making that a proper day out that is packed with, I want to go back. Then people might hear about going to a live rugby game is amazing. I want to go to more and more, and you grow it like that. I mean, you look at some of the games we've got this weekend, there's no other sport on, as Rob Kitson pointed out in his article today, which Alex will probably pick up on. It's a prime time. We're going to be prime viewing. There's no top 6 football teams playing each other. So we've got all the eyes on us, but you've got some huge matchups as well. And even Colby versus Knoll on the weekend. I think we've got a chance to sort of put it out there.
I do think, as well, when you've seen stuff in like football, like Cristiano Ronaldo scored, he's my favourite. He does all that stuff, the celebration. How much trouble did Chris Ashton get for doing the Ash Bash, right? But that captured the imagination. People wanted to see it. And, you've probably got a million old duffers. What was if he drops the ball? Well, he probably will drop the ball. But that's Chris Ashton. I'm not advocating we all have stupid celebrations, but I think if we could, exactly what Tim says, create an experience, but encourage ourselves, and also stop worrying so much about what some of these people think, and just do it. And I think that's why I love Bristol. Bristol's social media. It's like they've gone, okay, we're not going to listen to what anybody says. It's got so much character, amusement, and then you've suddenly seen all the other rugby clubs like, oh crap, we can actually do something a bit funny, but they're not quite as funny, or it's not quite on trend. But they're trying to do it, and I really admire that. It's Bristol and probably Northampton and my old club Wasp are the only social media that I would want to follow, because I don't even care about Bristol. I just love the social media stuff they do and the clips and the caricatures they create.
But actually, even with Bristol, they're also good when it's not going their way. They've got both sides nailed. Yeah,
that's the key thing. I mean, the Ash Splash. Literally, the more the media talked about it, the more kids down the local clubs are doing it, and that's sort of what you want. How it all went down with John O saying, no, you can't do it. Obviously, Ashy, you say that to Ashy, he's definitely going to do it. It's like, yeah, whatever, fuck off, I'm definitely doing this. But then that gets more media attention. Then everyone's like, who is this Ashton? There is a skill level and there's players in our game to be superstar. And there are clips where you watch and go, wow, how's he done that? But it's getting the audience to then, which is then going to filter through the game.
The thing that you haven't answered yet, and I want to pick up on your comment, Tins, about rugby being in a bubble. You throw in the likes of, and I'm going to do it, and it may be lazy, but it's where everyone will go. Cipriani, Henson, Quade Cooper, Ben Foden, even Hoff, during your career. You get slammed by the media and by the forums and by social media for stepping outside the boundaries and for wanting a little bit of the media spotlight. Is this cultural thing of all being about the team and not wanting tall poppies, is that a problem for the sport, or is that what makes the sport?
If I was honest, I think it is a problem, but it is also what makes the sport. But I think it is a problem. I would fully admit when I first met Sips, I was like, "Who's this dickhead?" It took me a while to sort of get him, but it has taken me a while and through experience and everything else to see that not everyone's the same. And some people have loads of talent, and they should be able to express it in whatever way. And it got me a long time to realise that I don't care what anyone else does as long as they perform on the field. That is the problem with rugby, is because you're not a Messi and you're not a LeBron where you are always the focus. You are the focus all the time. There are games where you'll go through 3 or 4 quiet games. And then if you have 3 or 4 quiet games, bang, you're out. You just don't do that in basketball. LeBron is always the focus. He's always going to be able to make jump shots. He's always going to be able to make slam dunks. He's always going to be able to get 30 points a game because he gets the ball out. Whereas in rugby, things can go wrong. You would suddenly drift out of the game and you're not in it. And then people are like, oh, what's happened to him? A month's like a lifetime in rugby at the moment.
So imagine you have the rugby writers and media, right? So they have their opinion. Some of those blokes have been around since the beginning of time, looking at the state of some of them. Right? They've been there and they have their opinions. I think we have a responsibility in the media, and I think that's why people like potentially good, the bad, the rugby, is because we give it an honest opinion. We're not beholden to anybody, and we can put a point across. If you have rugby journalists writing something in the papers, which a lot of people don't understand rugby, and that's what holds rugby back as well. It's perceived as very complicated. People love to go to the games, but the same thing is always leveraged against it. I don't know what that meant. I don't understand what that meant. So I think we could educate better as to what the hell's going on and maybe simplify some stuff potentially, as we talked about. But I think the responsibility of, like, for example, when Sky had the rights, you can't back that up. You can't people perpetuate the same stuff in the media. You need to have a counter view. And I think it's our responsibility, and why I speak so strongly about it, is I want to give a different view. I want to give you I'm a year and a bit out of the game now, but a player's view, and to say that actually, no, that's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. Get this different generation, this different perspective, and sort of phase out some of these old blokes who are amazing and had a great career. But what the hell do they know about social media? What the hell do they know? I mean, they thought social media was going for a pint in a garden with a load of people. It's a different vibe, and I think we've got responsibility to update the rugby coverage, the way we broadcast it, the way it's presented, the sort of understanding of it. And if you're getting a more of a measured, countered, modern view, that will help transform the game. If you get people just backing everything up, and someone like Clive Woodward is, come in and write a column for the Daily Mail saying that everyone's gash and get rid of someone, and then the following week just bring someone back, and it's perpetuate the same dry thing, which we just don't want anymore.
Interesting. I was just going to add, funny, I just remembered actually when you mentioned Sky. So I did 15 years there, and the viewing figures on a weekly Prem rugby basis were always pretty consistent. Leicester and Northampton ranked bigger than most. 2 things changed the dial: when Wilkinson played and when Cipriani played. The only 2 people who ever moved viewing figures, and they moved them by between 35 and 50%.
I think in England, we have a bit of a tall poppy syndrome thing. In America, if you go to LA, I know it's a bit of a bizarre world, but everyone's quite happy for everyone else to do well. English people, we're just a little bit like, oh shit, he's doing really well. Fucking hell. We're a bit tall poppy. I think New Zealand's even worse than us for that. I speak to my New Zealand friends, and that's why they're all like, don't ever be bigger than the game. You're not bigger than the black shirt. You're sort of like that. But I think it's interesting. Sorry,
Hask, that's why you ask anyone across the world, Klopp and all this talk about New Zealand, won't know many players. Guarantee no one knows players in New Zealand. They just know the All Blacks. They know the name the All Blacks.
I think we've got to understand and be at peace with that some people will tune in just to see Cipriani get filled in, just to see is he a dickhead or not. Obviously Johnny, because of he was the global, he was the face of English rugby. He was a superstar. He was good looking, unbelievable what he did. So you had women wanted to, do bits. Men wanted to be him. And he obviously was unbelievable at what he did. I think we should encourage these players, even if we're encouraging them for a fall, and because people want to tune in. That's why I think encouraging rugby players to have social media stuff. Like I love what Maro Toji's done. Right, when I first met Maro, really quiet, obviously he's a very studious guy. I think the outside rugby media were talking about making him captain and everything else. I was like, he's very quiet. He doesn't have that presence. I think he probably does now. I love the fact he started his own podcast. He's out there doing himself and bettering himself and showing a different character, whereas people just were guessing what he was like before he came. People guess what Owen Farrell's like. That's why I loved having Dylan Hartley on, both my podcast, What a Flank, and this one, because we just scraped all that nonsense back, all that perpetuated nonsense that the media had made out, this thug, this idiot, this whatever else they wanted to level against him. And what did we find? Sensitive, caring, compassionate bloke who did most of his rugby career on his own and had to deal with a lot of stuff. And then with Joe Marler, people love to dish him out, but I read some of the revelations in his book about his mental health issues, him crying on the way to training. But we don't know that because we only ever see what the media feed us. And I think it's our job to educate.
My comeback on that would be that I think players have got to be prepared to put themselves out there. I think Owen would have, I'm not going to say an easier ride, but he'd get so much more the benefit of the doubt in incidents with the red card the other day. If people knew more about him, if you know the person you are, it's much easier to understand the person. I said it off the back of the Dylan Hartley episode. I wish I'd known more about Dylan as a player because it would have made it much easier to contextualise him as a person and the battle that he'd had to get to the top. If I knew more about, I don't want Owen on the front page of Tatler necessarily like Mara,
Tins.
or Tins, Hello magazine. But if you know a bit about the man, it's easier to buy into them. It's easier to forgive and understand them.
Yeah, I was about to say, just imagine what Wilco could have done for the sport if he'd fully embraced it. If you remember when he was going through, he did that advert with Beckham, and if he'd have just fully got on that train and thought, right, I think he was at a level for England where he could have pushed it to a mass participation of influx of players or whatever, however you have to say that wrong as well. Getting a load more players in the game and kids because they're seeing him everywhere, then you could ask where would we have gone? And I think Owen's probably at the same place now where, yes, he's not comfortable with it, but I think you're right. He should be told that you could do a massive good for the sport if you could get out there more. And he has done stuff with Red Bull before, which I saw quite cool, and other bits and pieces. But it doesn't have to go away from his character. Bring his character into it and do it in the right way, but actually get him out there because he plays with passion, which everyone wants in a rugby player. He leads. He wants to play for his country more than anything in the world. And I think you feed on all those good points of him, then you do get the other side to what people sometimes see on the field and judge.
I think with Owen as well, the bloke I know is someone very, very kind, very supportive, very, an amazing sort of family man, just a really lovely guy, loves a laugh, loves a joke and everything else. So, I think, it would be good to see more of that. I genuinely, though, about Johnny Wilkinson. So for years, about 2003, 4, 5, when I was playing with Wasps, I would honestly come into the change room and sit down and go, do you know what would happen if I was Johnny Wilkinson? If I had his looks, his ability, and that level of fame, I would have been in Hollywood. I would have probably married Angelina Jolie. We would have been global. There would have been action figures. I would literally be everywhere with David Beckham. And the boys used to laugh. They go, that's why you don't have that power. That's why your rugby career is never going to go anywhere. I honestly, I think I said it to Johnny after a couple of beers, like, mate, what I would have done if I was you would never have seen anything like it. Michael Jordan, Ronaldo, forget about it. Rugby would have been, I would have either detonated rugby or it would have been incredible. I would have been hanging out with Tom Cruise. I would have been in movies. Mate, it would have been unbelievable.
So you're saying you wouldn't have been playing hacky sack in your back garden, like Johnny?
Hacky sack in the garden. would I be coming down to England to do extra kicking sessions with the lads? I wouldn't be speaking to any of you anymore. You wouldn't get anywhere near me. You'd get to a PR person. I'd just be like, Mike Tindall wants you. Who? Wouldn't even matter to me because I'd be like hanging out with Jack Nicholson.
I get that now anyway. So that
yeah, fine. I'm not even joking. When people ask you what would you do if you won the lottery, I could give you an hour soliloquy on what I would do if I won the lottery. I have thought so many times about what I would do if I had Johnny Wilkinson's power and ability.
There's another podcast in there, Hoff. Why don't you wrap that up and find a sponsor? I'm aware we're covering some of the stuff that we went over last week, but I think it's interesting. I think it's a debate that's going to continue. It's going to continue. I don't know where we find an answer. We have spent a lot of time talking about Sarries. Jesus, it was good at the weekend, wasn't it? I mean, Tins, do you want to dive in on the quarter-final over Leinster?
They were just on it, weren't they? I'm not going to say that myself and Haskell are the oracles, but we called this months ago that is going to be their sole goal, to just go and spoil everyone's party, rub their face in it. Okay, you can relegate us. Look, we've cut loads of players. We'll still turn up and do a job on you. Sort of point that Haskell and I have made for years about the fact that it's not the players that make it; it's the atmosphere that they built, the team camaraderie that they've galvanised together is why they win games. And game on the weekend, they were just all over Leinster. That first half, Leinster just were getting smashed. They didn't know what had hit them, and that's what Sarries do to you. If you're not ready for it, they'll be out far more physical than you are. Maro Itoje was unplayable, just on it. I mean, he plays that line, and when he gets it spot on, which he was on the weekend, he was just sensational. Then you throw Alex Good again, thrown into the spotlight of, oh my God, he's playing 10. Are they going to pick that Manu there? No, they're going to go with Alex. And bang, just does a job casually in an armchair. He did look like he had weights in his shoes when he went for that try, which I did give him a bit of abuse on Twitter, and he came back to me going, "Oh, back off, will you?" I was like, don't worry, pal. I had that sentence about me for years. Sean Maitland was like walking next to him going, "Mate, just pass me the ball and I'll jog it in." So they were just so good, and you could see by the way they reacted that was their only focus. That had been their only focus. And how could you argue with them in terms of going the whole way now? You know, I think people will have taken that bet once they got that relegation and they started having to cut players. And I mean, they are taking on a fantastic team in Racing, but we'll have to wait and see.
I saw Greenwood lumped on them the day they had their relegation confirmed. He put a big bet on them to win the European Cup. Yeah, well done him.
Thanks.
I like the quote from Richard Wigglesworth after the game saying, perhaps it'll prove that what we built is true and special. There is something actually in the fact that they are standing up while their foundations are being sort of drilled away at Haskell. I mean, do you admire the response from them in everything that's happened?
Yes, I do, and I think it just goes to prove, what I said before is that the only team that could be really aggrieved is Exeter because they lost them in a few finals. Again, it goes back to our opening comments. Yes, there are superstars in rugby, but some of these players, they may depth of squad may help you, but what they have is an environment that encourages them not to overtrain, understands the players, looks after them from top to bottom. They have a great team spirit. They play for each other. Half of them have migrated through the academy together. And I just think it sticks two fingers up. I'm not saying, cheating in sport's not right. Bending the books isn't right. I understand that. But I think people who got carried away and have done what we always do is just assume that, oh, well, if they didn't have those players, they wouldn't be as good. Those guys were awesome on the weekend. And I think if you look at the camaraderie they have, they're desperate to get back in and train together. And I think that it really does stick two fingers up to everyone and just show them what they're about. And I'm sure we'll see the back of them if they can keep it together,
The word on Leinster, Tins?
I think they were just shell-shocked. They couldn't do it. They just couldn't get in the game in the first half. And, that is what Leinster are. They play generally on the front foot, and then they look very dangerous, and they obviously have quality all through their team, but they just weren't allowed to be, what you would class as be Leinster. They weren't given the time on the ball. They were just hounded, harassed, and taught how to play knockout rugby at the highest level. And there's just, if you think of the quality that is in that Leinster team, it just makes you tip your cap more to Sarries really than them. Yes, they came back into it in the second half, and Sarries did tire a little bit, but that's fully understandable with what they were throwing in that first 60 minutes. But still, once you've got that far ahead in a quarter final, it's very hard to pull it back.
A quick word on Exeter Saints as well, Has. Did you watch that one? You've spoken to any?
I didn't. I saw the score. Obviously, Northampton have been having a bit of a stinker recently. I think that they haven't won anything apart from the first couple of games, and obviously people are getting quite upset. I saw some stuff in the interviews before, and I believe, because I've seen how hard they work, and I know that what Chris Boyd's like as a coach, and the other coaches there, that I thought for a minute that they might beat Exeter, but they look pretty special with Sam Simmons and Henry Slade. I always think every team's got one victory in them, and maybe all that adversity and losing and not being able to get absolutely drilled by Bristol didn't help. But I thought it was very impressive as well. The young back row player Manny turning into a tight head prop and winning 3 penalties against an international front row was pretty punchy. I mean, I think if I tried to go down the scrum, my spine may have just snapped in the middle, and that would be the end of me.
Exeter look very good, though. I mean, they've taken a long time to find their way into the latter stages, Tins, but they look pretty comfortable at the moment. Toulouse at home this weekend. I mean, you've got to favour Rob Baxter's man, haven't you, despite what Toulouse did?
Well, yeah, down there, obviously, Exeter is a very tough place to go. It's going to be different for the French. Are they going to turn up and travel well? Whereas I think generally this Toulouse team I don't think they fall under that. They do seem to travel a lot better, and some of the tries that they scored was, I just can't wait to see Panaud. I just think he's outstanding in terms of just what he did to bounce off those two guys and then just spin and then casually jog down the field. They are special, that Toulouse teams, but it's going to take a special performance to go down to Exeter. And I want Exeter to go through. We talked about it last week, and I think they're on the similar lines to Saracens in terms of what they built down there in terms of the team wanting to play for the team. They don't necessarily, going back to our superstars, they don't necessarily build the team around superstars. They build it around a complete team effort. I think it's going to be a complete contrast of the superstars of Toulouse. You think of Colby, and his feet are just
ridiculous.
They're just ridiculous. I mean, I feel sorry for what's the Irish winger, Stockdale. Who just got done. Just got done like a kipper, didn't he? Twice, just on the same little hop and a step like Jason Robinson, and bang, you're gone. You talk about size in rugby mattering. That's where being small and agile really benefits you, and he sort of turned them inside out. So no, I just can't. I think that's going to be a great game, and hopefully it'll stack up that way.
And Racing against Sarries, the entertainers against the bad boys. Can Sarries go again? How can you sustain that level of intensity before the reality burns in?
I think it's amazing what the power of proving people wrong can do. That is all they're living off. You take this week, as Haskell mentioned, they empty their tanks every single game because they know during the week they're going to let them fill them back up. So that's all this week will be about, is filling those back up, focusing on themselves and going out and doing it again.
And I also think, Alex, is that, when we had Dylan Hartley on and talked about his, Northampton winning, the reason they did so well was they had the mob mentality. It was them against everybody else, and they used to just try and go and fill people in, and they were united. I think Saracens have that mob mentality now. I think, and they've done it again, and they'll all be positive. I've got to know Alex Sanderson a little, better in the last couple of years, and and I really admire what he does. And I've asked him actually to come on here. He was like, "Mate, I'm not sure I've got any chat." I was like, "You'll be fine." It's not all about making crap jokes. That's my department. But I think he's intriguing.
How have you got to know him?
Bizarrely, he's very good friends with my mate Gary Truman, and I keep going to social events with him and just getting to have a beer and a chat with him. And I sat next to him at an awards ceremony a couple of years ago, and just. I know everybody really admires him. The Saracens lads talk about him, as what an incredible person he is, motivator, orator, everything. So he and the rest of the team and the coaching team really know how to get the best out of these guys. And I think that the real mob mentality, I think they'll close ranks, enjoy what they do, worry about themselves, and just go and give racing the best they've got again.
I do think they are also very good at planning to play teams. Yeah. I think they knew how Leinster were going to come play against them, and did a great job of nullifying it. And with Racing coming this weekend, there are some aggressive ball carriers in that Racing team, but there's also threats all over the place that they'll try and use. And I think they'll come up with a plan, and that's the good thing about it. They can win it ugly, or they can win it on a defensive setting, or you think they're doing that, and then the next thing you know, you've lost by 40 and you don't really know how it happened. I've got a feeling they'll figure out a plan, and they're great at sort of executing it. They are two really intriguing games, and hopefully we'll end up with an full English final.
That'd be quite spicy, wouldn't it? Exeter, Sarries in the European Cup, the final hurrah of the season.
It would just be brilliant now after everything that's gone on. They are the biggest team that gets hurt by Sarries' success, and probably Exeter in the last 3 years. Let's settle it.
We shall watch with great interest how that all unfolds. Just while we're recording this, actually, there's obviously quite a big story developing around crowds not getting back into stadiums at the moment, and a huge potential impact for rugby. And I've just got a couple of tweets from Ed Marriage, who used to produce 5 Live's rugby coverage. No punches pulled by RFU boss Bill Sweeney on grassroots rugby. Our community rugby clubs, many of which run grounds at the heart of their communities, are under threat. Without crowds and league games, community rugby will lose an estimated £86 million in revenue this season. Ed goes on to say that Bill Sweeney, Chief Executive of the RFU, says, with no fans this autumn, We, the RFU, are going to see £122 million reduction in revenue, resulting in a loss of 46 million. And with no fans for the Six Nations, we'll see a 138 million reduction in revenue with a loss of 60 million, thereby preventing investment in areas such as women's elite game and community rugby. I mean, if that ain't Armageddon for the sport, I'm not quite sure what is. They're also saying that with no crowds heading back into Premiership grounds, they are terrified that some of the clubs are going to go to the wall by Christmas.
That was always the case, wasn't it? They'd always said that if we weren't back, do it in full swing by Christmas, we were dead and buried. So they have to find a solution. Look, this virus is here to stay. Yes, but we've got to get on with it.
I'm not sure too many people come here for their COVID advice, but I think the
we definitely don't want
correct.
to talk about it, but when it affects our sport, it's unfortunate, isn't it?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, actually, I've just got a Premiership Rugby statement through saying the Chief Exec, Darren Childs, has commented, "We can confirm we've held a very positive meeting with the Secretary of State, Oliver Dowden, today. There's a clear understanding of the effects that today's news will have across the sports sector, including rugby," blah, 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 blah. He goes on, "As we seek solutions, we look forward to working with the government on a rescue package for professional club rugby in England, and we will continue to seek innovative ways to overcome these challenges to ensure Premiership Rugby and its clubs have a future." I mean, Christ alive, the fact we're even reading these statements is, well, it's just extraordinary. Any more on the rugby side of things? I quite enjoyed this, actually. It's a bit of a rarity. Tim, did you watch the Australian Super Rugby final or not? Brumbies beat the Queensland Reds?
I didn't see that, actually, no.
No.
So that's why we can't help you there. I even forgot to watch the...
Quite interesting. Dave Rennie, though, has been certainly talking up the Wallabies ahead of the Bledisloe tests. I think he'll be quite an interesting appointment, and certainly the man to get the most out of what they've got right now. We're going to try to get Michael Check on, aren't we?
Yeah, and I thought they'd talk about James O'Connor's playing 10 as well, aren't they, at the moment? Because he was filling in quite a lot of doing that, so that'd be quite interesting.
I was watching I watched the semi-finals, and I was just think how many caps James O'Connor could have had. I mean, he had 60 by the time he was 22 or something. 23.
The first game I ever saw him was when he played for Austria. I was in the stand watching when we toured Australia, and it was Australia A versus England A. In 30 minutes, he scored 3 tries, stepped everyone, did everything. I was like, who is that kid? He's like, he's some 17-year-old called James O'Connor. And they took him off at half-time, and then he played for the Wallabies against England on the weekend. He made for early age. He was unplayable.
Again, you go back to global superstars. He just flew onto this scene, and then a few things off the field happened, and it sort of went down spin. He went on his travels and went all around and played some other clubs, but you know, his skill set and how he can still play at the top level is fascinating. I think he's playing awesome at the moment as well. Still only 30. I've just looked. He's still only 30. How long has he been around for? 24 years. Was he 4 when he first played?
What's the name of that centre? Is it Goodhue?
Jordan Pettier. Oh, Jack.
No. Jack Goodhue. He's shaved his mullet off.
It's gone. I know.
It's gone. But did you see the Australian centre? I think they played together. He said that since he's had a shit haircut, he's not putting any of his terrible chat out there again. Is it a case of Samson? You know, if he's cut his lid, has he lost his whole identity? I don't know.
It's taking on Hask for amount of clubs as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 clubs.
Lovely.
8 clubs by the age of 30. That's not bad, is it? 18 months per club. Right, Lord, you've got a scoot, haven't you? Because we're going to talk book off the back of this. Anything exciting this weekend? Anything we need to know about?
No, we're doing a little clay day with Shawsey tomorrow. Then we've got a work day on Thursday for the podcast.
Where was my invite?
I don't know. Why didn't you ask Shawsey? He phoned me up last minute. I did not even think about you.
Shawsey. Terrible.
He's got Ollie Phillips going. He probably doesn't even know.
Shut up.
I knew that.
Does Ollie Phillips ever do any work? He works at PwC, but he's never in the office. I want a job at PwC because I'm going to sail around the world, shoot everything, and do corporates all day long.
Actually, Mia went rugby for the first time this week. So
go on. How was it? Down at Minch?
Yeah, down at Minch. She enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. And she's going to do football for the first time this weekend as well. So, no, she enjoyed it. She does like chip off the old her dad. She just likes to truck it up. But we'll work on that. We'll work on that.
Is she quite formidable? She's got quite a powerful handoff, bit of a step, gas.
Yeah, she's quite aggressive. So, yeah, she'll be all right.
That's probably a mother, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah.
You're aggressive, but Ned. I'm terrified.
A combination of both, I think. And yeah, it's probably not a good thing.
And we'd just like to welcome our friends from Hello Magazine. That'll be on page 23 this week with photos and commentary as we go. Well done, Lord. Lovely to see you. We'll catch up next week. We're going to take a quick break. Yeah, peace out, bro. Actually, say that bit out.
Leave it in. Have you ever heard anything like it? So,
peace out, mon bruv. Peace out, mon bruv. Right, that'll do.
On that note, ciao.
Shut up. After the break, we're going to talk about Hask's new book, What a Flanker. And you did hear that correctly. A lot of revelations that you'll never have heard before, but you are listening to and watching The Good, the Bad and the Rugby on 21/6 Alex Payne. Farewell to Tins. Hask is hanging about. Don't forget you can sign up on our social media sites if you want to go and play there. Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. It's the first place you'll find out about guests, competition, events at Caterer. Just type in Good Bad Rugby. We're very easy to find. It's also where you'll be able to track down the Nors, who is loading you up as the new member of our team with all your pub ammo for what should be a great weekend of games. He's got all the stats, all the numbers and all the angles that you might need if you're trying to impress people. James, next week sees the launch of your autobiography, What a Flanker. We've been talking about it for long enough. You've got a podcast following alongside. We thought we'd dig through the wreckage and pull out a few stories we've never heard before. After all, one of your catchphrases over the course of talking to you over the last few years has always been, I'm saving that for the book. It's out. It is very genuinely, and I wouldn't say this if I didn't mean it, it is genuinely very funny. And you've ghostwritten it as well with Ben Durst, isn't it?
Yes.
He has nailed your tone of voice.
Ben did a brilliant job. And I basically got the proofs through for it. And he really captured my voice. And actually, the reason I went with him was before we did stuff and he sent me a brief of something, actually a transcript from the House of Rugby. And I just loved the way he wrote it. But actually, when Chloe sat down and wrote it, she went, it's an amazing book, but he's written it in such a way that it kind of, she felt that it wasn't, no, she was very complimentary. She went, he's an amazing writer and you're an idiot rugby player. And she said, you wouldn't be able to write this way. But I got a bit competitive and I was like, right, hold on a minute. So I sat down and then basically went through the entire book and I probably added about 40,000 words to it and then re-edited it down and basically took all of his amazing framework and good words and just made sure that my tone was in there. So if I picked up a story, I wanted it to sound like me because he's obviously a 10,000 times better writer than I'll ever be. And without him, the book would never be as good. But I really wanted to own it because I know a lot of people do it and then don't know. But I must have gone through that book 3 or 4 times myself just to add bits. And there was a bit where I would add something and it would get taken out again. So I had to, and then we had obviously the barristers look through it a couple of times and stuff. So
what feedback did you get from the barristers?
Well, it was interesting. So obviously we got the barristers to read through it twice, but because no one had read it other than me and Ben, I remember asking my publisher, I was like, so what did the barrister think? And he went, oh, well, I've not, he gave all his legal points. Went, no. What did he think? And it was like, we just got like a little paragraph. Lovely stuff. And I was like, oh my God, he was not interested. We had to take quite a few bits out. And I mean, even then I'd been, in my mind, kind of not that aggressive. And all the stories, and I know you're going to come on to certain things, but I think I've given a fair and just appraisal from my perspective. And I have given credit where credit's due, but I've also called people and stuff that I feel was no good. And this wasn't about Alan Partridge. After the end of the chapter, I say, needless to say, I had the last laugh, or I've definitely bounced back. It was about, I've sat through meetings and media briefings and held my tongue, and never given my side of the story. And this book was my chance to say, this is actually what happened. This is what I thought. And because I never wanted to be controversial when I played, in that way. I didn't want to be outspoken because rugby's a small place. Everything is about teacher-pupil relationship. And some coaches I work with, they talk about wanting honesty, but they can't. Myself especially, there's a big thing of the male ego. Everybody has a male ego. And how often does it take for you to actually realise that perhaps you were wrong? And if your wife bollocks you or someone has a go at you, your first reaction certainly mine is to rear up. But then you have a moment of reflection. But in those heated environments, say you do someone in public, their first reaction is to fight because their ego is dented. I work with a couple of coaches who would just turn around and say, well, you fucked up a couple of lineouts this week, so you should just worry about your job. And I was like, you've got to put that ego on hold to hear what needs to be that needs to be done. So I just wanted to put that across, but also capture, the humour that has been my career. And sadly, I've actually realised that I left out about 40 stories. I've got a thing on my notes, and every time I sit down with someone, they go, "The book, did you put that in?" I'm like, shit! No, I haven't. So hopefully if it sells well, we'll get a book 2, which will be probably less aggressive and slightly more funny.
Volume 2 on its way. Who are you most nervous about that you've driven over with a bus and reversed?
I've not purposely thrown anyone on the bus. I mean, I think, probably Stuart Lancaster is going to have a few strong views on what I've got to say. Maybe Martin Johnson. It's just my honest appraisal. And I didn't say anything at the time, and I didn't feel like there was any need to say anything at the time. After 2011, I didn't take part in that review. I didn't feed back to anybody because I had my own stuff to deal with. And I feel, the players in both 2015 and 2011 have responsibility. Coaches don't take the field. Coaches don't, play, and there was certainly a lot of stuff that just wasn't acceptable. So I've tried to be very honest and open, but I had views on why things didn't work, and I've forgiven them.
I would love to, I very much doubt whether they will, but to make this a two-sided opportunity, and that if Stuart or Martin Johnson would like to come and call you out, I'm sure they'll have things that they'd like to say as well. It would be a fascinating discussion. It's been a long time since 2011. It's been a pretty long time since 2015. You'd be up for that? I mean,
of course. Of course, and I'm not. And the whole point of the book was not to drag stuff up. These were two important elements. The reason I was so sad about not making 2019 is because both my World Cups experience had been absolute toilet. And the joke we talked about it is if it had been a mark on my career, it'd be a big skid mark, a failure, a catastrophe wrapped up in a mess. That's obviously Ben's very articulate wording, not mine. And that was sad. World Cup should be a super fun, super kind of, massive moment. Both ended in, one ended in, almost public shame for me. And then 2015 ended, very unfairly because of, the way that I think the team disintegrated. But I also think that, the media destroyed us. The media were looking to take someone like Stuart Lancaster down. And Stuart didn't deserve that. Stuart worked extremely hard, was very caring, he's a lovely bloke, and very impassioned about what he did. Did I think how he run the team, was right? No. Did I think he had a horrible job to pick up after 2011? Bear in mind, we were described as the worst touring side in the history of sport. We were drunken, sexual deviant, boat jumping off, lunatics, everything. And so Stuart had an impossible job. But I think he made mistakes. My observations about those mistakes. But don't ever say that he didn't prepare that 2015 team properly. Don't ever say that he didn't work extremely hard and work incredible hours to make that team. But I think he discovered pretty early on that it was probably 10% coaching, and 90% everything else. And I think that's why Eddie's been successful, because he was just a maverick, and it could have easily gone the other way for Eddie. Lose the first few games. All the people that he was a maverick to, and he's not an RFU man. But trust me, you saw what happened after one loss in a World Cup final in France. Everybody was ready to bury him. But then he managed to turn it around again, and so the wheel keeps turning until next time something doesn't go well, and all the people he's upset and everything else will come out and knife him. That's the sport we're in.
You mentioned 2011. You say chaotic from day one. Talk to me about the Fox.
Firstly, I qualify the chaotic is that we actually worked very hard. So I know there was that famous thing that they talk about, the right-hand man of Jono, the guy that helped build relationships, Gerard Murphy, I think his name was. And actually, we got to the 2010 tour to Australia, was probably one of the best tours I've been on. We'd had to work very hard at building communication between the coaches and the players and the players, and it was a really positive place. Problem was, when we got to the World Cup, and the training levels were probably at the right intensity. We sort of got everything back to where we were. But when we came into World Cup camp, from day one, on the wall, there was 8 sessions a day. We were like, why? Which is World Cup? Why do you have to do 8 sessions a day? It's not thought out. And in the first 2 days at camp, we run 15K. That was day 1 and 2 of pre-season. And we were like training in the dark by the time we'd finished. And it was like panic setting, and it was chaotic. And I think that, boys will be boys. And I basically, a lot of times in England, I was sort of, just kept myself to myself. So, for example, when I went to New Zealand with the England team and Stuart in 2014, I called my friend up, a guy called Morgan Donahue, who used to work at Serato, and said to him, listen, I'm not comfortable being out, you know, in this hotel. I don't want to cause any trouble. I don't want to be associated with anything. And he sent me a pair of DJ decks. And while other lads would go out, I just stayed in my room and just DJ'd on my own, because I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel like secure that something wouldn't happen or I would be labelled as something. And very much in 2011, I just kept myself. And one evening I went out at Penny Hill at night and started shooting rabbits on the golf course. I thought I was actually doing them a favour because they have a lot of rabbits, but obviously I didn't tell anyone apart from Dozza that I was doing it. And what I was doing is I got all these rabbits that I shot, and I apologise to animal rights people, and I'd take some home to feed them to my dog, and then I would either give them and I'd put them outside the back of Penny Hill Park. And obviously some of the lads saw me doing this, like, what are you doing? I said, well, maybe it'll attract a fox. And so what happened is then subsequently I was doing this for quite a few nights, and this fox was having a buffet. I mean, the fox was as big as Mako by the time it had finished. And I then went out on the pitch one evening, and I saw a fox and shot the fox. So I then brought it back, you know, and basically texted Dozza.
This is in the Royal Borough of Berkshire, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
You're not exactly in the Highlands at this point.
No, but also Dozza's got a lot to blame for it, because he was like, Hass, mate, you know, that fox is fucking laughing at you. You're never going to shoot it, mate. So I was like, okay, I will actually. So I shot it and sent him a photo, and I was like, fox is fucking laughing now, is it? And I stupidly left out the back of the hotel, right? And what I didn't realise, that some of the other lads had cottoned on and started bringing their air guns in. And every afternoon from like 2 till 4, you just hear this like noise at the back of the thing. And obviously nobody, because it was the back of the hotel, nobody batted an eyelid. But what I realised, they found the fox and they put it around the bottom of a tree. And what they shot at the fox because it was dead. And then they put a target on it and started shooting that. And we had a meeting once where we got all called into his room. And Jono's walked in and gone, who the fuck has brought guns into Penny Hill? And we were like, nobody has. He went, yes, you have. A group of children have found a fox tied to the bottom of a tree with a paper target on its face. So I suggest if any of you got any guns here, you get them off site, you fucking idiots. So as this meeting broke up, lads are like running with guns under coats and stuff, like off into car parks. So but whoever, I mean, I didn't put the target out there, but I did shoot the fox, unfortunately.
One story in, I think we've got the RSPCA and the firearms police on our case. Is it possible that I can sort of distance myself from everything to do with this conversation moving forward from a legal context? I'm literally just reading questions. You call Lewis Moody the puppet because it seemed like Jono had his hand up his ass and was working his mouth. Yeah. Have you heard from the former England captain?
I haven't. And obviously, as I qualify in the book, it's tongue in cheek. I remember there was a couple of times where we had some issues with, for example, they hadn't sorted out the EPS contract, and we were supposed to turn up to this RPA event, and they hadn't sorted any of the details. We hadn't been paid. There was a load of issues over it. And we all got to this event and we were like, right, we're going to go on strike. We're not going to attend. Unless they sort us out, we're not going to attend. And Lewis goes, come on, lads, stop fucking around. We're going to go. And we were like, yeah. And as we pretended to go up, he walked off the bus and we all hid behind the thing. And he came back and was like shouting at us. So we all just called him the RFU puppet. You're saying whatever you want. You're not a team man, you bastard. You're a puppet. So anyway, it was just a joke. But we did give him a load of shit. Obviously, he used to play with Jono. So don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
What happened at Altitude, the nightclub?
Do you know what? Again, I wasn't there.
You were in bed.
So I was in bed. Do you know why? Because I stayed out of trouble. For all the silly things, controversy, I knew exactly when to go out on the piss, when not to go out on the piss. And I never bent the rules like that. I mean, apart from shooting some rabbits, but that was the best intentions of staying well out of the way and not doing anything. And the issue with it is that what happened is that they laid on some drinks, and basically the lads went out, and probably a few of them got it wrong or did get it wrong. But the narrative and the story that was printed was insane. The Irish had been on the piss in that bar for almost 24 hours, so much so that one of the star players, not a name, got carried out, right? And they had to shut the bar, clear it all up, pay the band to stay longer because there's going to be a riot because the Irish wouldn't leave. The Welsh were pissing out the wall there, but because Sam Warburton got interviewed and went, I haven't drunk for 6 months. Everyone was like, go on the Welsh. The problem with the English was they turned up in an evening, it was called Midget Madness Night. And there was some, I don't know what politically correct terminology is these days, but there were some vertically challenged members and they were paid to be there. None of the England players picked up and threw them or did anything, but they were quite friendly. They were rugby fans, so they were running around tackling the lads. They were doing like there's something in wrestling called a lariat, where it's like a clothesline. So these little guys would come out and be like, lariat, like hit the lads over. The lads just playing, but someone took a photo, stitched it up, and because they played that bullshit narrative that Mike had done something when he hadn't, the bloke just sold it out, and our media were the first person to do it. They were like, plucky Welsh, having a good time, drunk, idiotic English. No one stood to our defence. And because the RFU spent the whole time shitting themselves about their image, they just allowed people to ride roughshod over them. No one came out and stood up and said, this didn't happen like this isn't right. Yes, some lads got it wrong. Yes, lads got, too drunk in the middle of a World Cup. Would I advocate drinking during a World Cup? No, I'd wait for the weekend after the World Cup and then blow the doors off it. But that's me personally, and I don't handle drink very well. I feel really shit after it. People put their hand up, but people were allowed to just make up stories and narratives, and our English media are terrible for that. And then obviously Mike, with his profile, they just went after him.
You mentioned Manu jumping off the boat. You were involved in the maid incident, obviously.
Yeah.
Mike, we've discussed altitude, bungee jumping, all that kind of thing. Maybe this is a ridiculous question, but where does the blame lie now? When you look back 9 years on, was it just a collective shit show, or did the players get it wrong? Did the management get the framework wrong? Did the RFU not tell the story correctly? How do you analyse the mess now?
Players definitely got it wrong, right? They should have been aware that we were. I mean, they were, but they should have understood that people were looking for us to fall. You could have the. We went bungee jumping. I mean, I'll give you an example. So I remember coming into the media thing, and the media guy then and Martin Johnson took me to one side, said, right, I hear you're doing something called the Big Four, which was on a day off, and it was like bungee jumping, whitewater rafting, helicopter ride, and something else, right? So I said, yeah. And they said, we want you to have Sky Sports and a guy from Getty come with you. And I said, absolutely not. I said, no way. I said, downtime should be downtime. They went, it's not really a question. They're coming. And I said, I don't think it's a good idea. Don't do it. And I was told to shut up and basically get on with it. And I flagged it. So we went off and did this thing, had a lovely day, which every team did. Every team did it. Every team was doing it. New Zealand's a beautiful place with lots to explore. Then when we were diving off the bungee jumps and doing everything else like that, and like doing funny things and stupid stuff, that's all well and good. But then when you get accused of, Mike gets accused of what he is, the lads get accused of drinking, we get accused of the hotel maid. It then plays into the narrative of Mike Tindall stag do. And we've given them such access, thinking that we're doing ourselves a favour, but we completely stitched ourselves up because they had all the photos, all the narrative, and they just create a story around it. And as I said in the book, the RFQ should have been way stronger. They were on damage limitation. And that's what they were frightened about, was branding damage limitation instead of being hard line. There was half these stories.
What does that look like? What does hard line look like?
I just think if you panic about your image and you pander to the media, so Stuart Lancaster befriended the media, right? He saw how bad they were in 2011. He said, you know what? If you let the enemy in the gate, we'll be fine. If we invite them down to training, if we're nice to them. We had people down in training that would come and watch, and they were the first people to knife him. Like went above and beyond to knife him. So, you're always going to get knifed, when you're working in English sport. You see it in every element of our sport, football and everything else. But we should have been hard line. You should have called people out in terms of that. Should have been us players should have been allowed to stand up and speak and stop people speaking for us and being told to pay people money.
What would you have said? I'm genuinely interested in what you would have said.
Yeah. I was just absolute crock of shit. I said, there was absolutely no story to this, absolutely no validity. I've never conducted myself in this way. I am 100% will go after anybody who insinuates that that's the case. And I said that, we've done nothing wrong in my particular case. And, I put a hand up, we have made a mistake, but what's been written about the narrative, we had no voice. The players had no voice, and all we were told to do was like brush it under the carpet and not say anything, do the best for the team. But all that gets you when you don't reply to stuff.
So this is the incident with the hotel maid. Just give a brief synopsis of that.
Basically, a hotel maid let herself into a room with me and me and Ashton, me, Dylan Hart, and Chris Ashton were in a room because someone had nicked her walkie-talkie. They've been at it for a couple of days, like messing around. And
Who had essentially talking?
I don't know who. I think I'm not going to mention any names, but I think someone had taken it originally, and basically a big delivery of chocolate had arrived, and the conditioners had confiscated it. So I think they were taking the walkie-talkie and were like making demands, like, you know, get the chocolate, we're going to get Dave Barton or whatever. And basically this went on. She let herself into the room, and in that period of time accused me and Dylan Hartley and Chris Ashton of sexual assault. And it just never happened. You know, we got a video of it. It never happened like that. It was utter crap. And the process through that went to the point where we were encouraged to pay her 30,000 New Zealand dollars, and we were made to apologise. And basically, what the RFU found us guilty for, they watched the video back, agreed there was no sexual implications. I said something stupid, which I instantly corrected myself for. But nothing mad. It's in the book. But basically, what had happened is that we were told to apologise. And when they first heard about this incident, because there's lots more to it than the story, that I had to legally be very careful about what I said. But essentially, this happened on a Thursday. 2 days later, or the next night on Friday, this particular person, his maid, was out on the piss. Went out with all the other lads. I stayed in the hotel. Was absolutely fine. Fell over drunk for some reason on her own. Woke up in hospital, and I was asked what was wrong, and she went, "Oh, the lad sexually assaulted me, that's why I got so drunk." Yet she actively was out, the lads never mentioned it, never complained. And it was actually her mother who complained, not her. And then so basically what happened is because the mother got involved, the police liaison who's in New Zealand was like, "Oh, well, we've got to look into this." They looked into it, found absolutely nothing. But the one thing they found us guilty for was allowing a woman to be 3-on-1 in a room with us, right? That's what we found guilty for. You know, they said Rob Andrews' even case, you can Google it, said allowing a woman to be, because it was her story against ours. I pointed out she was a hotel maid. She let herself into the room, right? We've got a video of it. We couldn't have done much more. But they said, right, that's your situation. When we went back from Queenstown, we were told that we should apologise to this maid. And I said, no. I'm not apologising because that's an admission of guilt. And I said, you know, I'm not going to do it. I said, I've done nothing wrong. I'm not going to do it. But we were told you are. And you're going to do it, and we're going to buy a load of flowers. You're going to give her a bunch of flowers, and you're going to say sorry. I said, I tell you what I'm doing. I'm not going to say sorry. I'm going to say, because we found out about the drunken night falling over, and I'm going to say to her, I gather you had a bit of a tough time. Here you are. So instead of being there with the liaison, instead of being there with someone watched us, we were led into the bowels of this hotel by the hotel manager, dumped in the middle of this hotel, like in the depths of it. The bloke walked out and left us in a room again, 3-on-1 with the maid, right? It's unbelievable, right? So she's come in, and as soon as we've gone to say, here's the flowers, she's gone, I'm so sorry about causing you guys any trouble. I was just getting a bit of abuse from my fellow teammates, from someone stealing my walkie-talkie. Oh, you know, please let the players know that they can still talk to me. They won't let me work on your floor now. She was more upset about that, this incident. So I was like, look, I gather you had a bit of a tough time, have these flowers. Because initially I was going to walk out the room, because I said to Dylan and Ashley, I said, because we were in there for 5 minutes on our own, I said, this just fucking stinks. So I bet it's a hidden camera. This feels like an absolute stitch-up, right? So just as I was about to walk, she came in and did all that. So we gave her the flowers, thinking that was the end of it. But like the way the RFU dealt with stuff it was like Light of the Long Knives. It was like people having hushed conversations in corridors, doors banging at night, people getting called into one-on-one meetings, all when it was supposed to be over, like coaches not looking me in the face, people like legal people not looking at me. And then I get a knock on the door, and I'm taken down to this meeting room, and lo and behold, the hotel maid feels that she wasn't satisfied with her apology, and that we'd said something inappropriate to her when we had done the apology, and that the RFU had some conversations with her and offered to pay some legal bills, and she'd got a no-win, no-fee lawyer that had come back saying, well, we won't say anything to the media if you pay us 30,000 New Zealand dollars. And I was like, what are you talking about, right? What would you, how have we got from this to this to this to this, right? And they're like, well, listen, we think you should do the best for the team. And I said, you've seen the video. And someone told me in the room, because I can't be bothered with the drama, said, well, actually, I've looked into it, and I think she's got a human rights case against you, right? And I was like, but we haven't done anything wrong. So I was like, fuck this. So I called my dad up, and he says it's like the worst trip of his life, because he just arrived in New Zealand, just as I landed this bombshell. And my agent, Duncan Sandland, and we got a New Zealand lawyer. And he watched the video, and in 2 seconds, he went, this is absolute crock of shit. And the bloke who told me that he'd had a human rights case hadn't watched the video. The only person to see the video was Martin Johnson. And then we were basically told to pay this woman 30,000 New Zealand dollars for the good of the team. We're not telling you to do it, but you need to do what's right for the team. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. To be honest with Ashley and Dylan, they were there, but I was the one that was just like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing this again. I had the incident at school with the video, the porno video with Dozer, and I not said anything, and it still haunts me to this day. People still think I was in a cupboard wanking off film and mate. Didn't happen like that. And then basically the woman then sold the story anyway. And basically they then released a statement that they reprimanded us and everything else. And then when I go back to UK, Rob Andrews sits in a meeting and finds me fucking guilty of being 3-on-1 in a room with a woman. I was like, you put me in the room with the woman. Because he said, when I went to the meeting, he went like this. He had like a headline. He went, how do we get from this, like the Mirror, whatever it was, like deviant England players, and the video to this? I went, well, do you want me to say the truth? Incompetence, mismanagement, pandering to the media. And I said, if you try to find me, or if you try to stitch me up, I will go public with this, because I'm not going to play for England again. After 2011, I was ready to do it. My dad wanted to do like a tell-all book. It was only when I got invited back in to Stuart, because it cost me about 150 grand in legal bills. That it's fucking set me back for years financially, having to fund that. And the RFU wouldn't pay me any money, wouldn't help me, didn't offer to do anything. Everybody lost all the notes. Everybody said they couldn't find anything. And we basically went on my own. I said to my dad, I stopped him doing it because Stuart Lancaster invited me back in. And if you burn them bridges, you're never going to play again. So now I've just got to tell my side of the story. There's more to it, more I can tell, more I can't.
What's amazing about this is very separate from the I haven't actually got to this bit in the book, but what I've read so far has made me laugh quite a lot. It's a very different side of the story. What do you think Martin Johnson thought of you post 2011?
I think he thinks I'm an arsehole. I think he thinks I'm everything he despises in someone as a rugby player. I tried to speak to him a couple of times, and events and stuff, and there's no love lost there. I think it's disappointing because, as I said, I think Martin Johnson would have been an absolutely brilliant England manager. I think he was hung out to dry and stitched up, but I think it's because he didn't do what he should have done, is he's just gone in and cleaned everything out. Any good manager and organisation, when they come in, if you inherit people, you're inheriting habits, you're inheriting stuff. Unless this person has an outstanding track record and universally loved and really captures the imagination, he should have come in and cleaned everything out. Basically like what Eddie did. Put your own team in that's, that you feel is going to be the best, but not just the best because they're your mates, the best because they're the ones that can do the best job for you. So I just said to him that, I would think that he would, I think he could have been incredible, and he just should have done what he did, which should have been the figurehead, the inspiring World Cup captain, the leader, and got other people in to do, the nitty-gritty coaching, and he was to set the standard, set the direction, but that didn't happen. And I said that I really, I enjoyed part of what I did, but I think the environment was not good, and that World Cup was just not, it was not good in it, and it's a shame. But I mean, I don't think he deserved to have what happened to him at all. He's too good a man, too much of a legend of a player. He's the only person I've ever been starstruck meeting. Joe Worsley introduced me to him when I was about 17, and I fucking couldn't speak. He's that much of a presence, that much of a legend of the game, and I'm sad that he got treated like that because he didn't deserve it. I'm sad that he hasn't worked in rugby again. That's genuinely what I feel. Him and I always got on. Him and I think everyone always liked to think that he was chalk and I was cheese, but we got on. I worked hard. He was always nice to me. He picked me through his whole demeanour. But I feel that, I think he probably feels I'm partly responsible. I think if you took the hotel maid instance out of it, I don't know. But it's a shame because, he's obviously a legend of a game and well respected. And he could have done some great things in rugby, but I just don't think he was given the chance. And I think the British media absolutely buried him. And then I think all those pieces getting leaked, it was in an untenable position.
You mentioned the leaks, actually. And again, I don't know if you go into that in the book. I mean, do you want to get to, is that worth going into now? It just sort of was an acidic finish to a pretty tough few weeks.
It was manna from heaven to everybody. That's, it just went on and on and on. And that's why I was so glad that I got to go to Japan. My parents found it way harder than I did. They're both quite sensitive to stuff, and having a son like me who divides opinion and has done some silly things, done some good things, it was hard. I went off to Japan, just didn't look at it, didn't know. I mean, when I read the leaks, because I saw some of it, I knew exactly who was saying what. You could hear their voices because they'd actually bizarrely said the same stuff in and around the coffee, in and around the cappuccinos. So you knew exactly what was going on, but it was just toxic, and it was a real shame because Martin Johnson and his coaching staff could not have worked harder to try to make it right. Did they get it right? Did they have their own balance right? Did they know how to create a winning environment? I don't think so. Did they pick the right game plans. I don't believe it was. I mean, I'm more be interested in what other players from those things come out and say, because there's been some incidents recently where players have spoken up and actually been right. And I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to cause more drama. But everyone else has pretended they haven't said it, and then everyone else has just gone because they value playing for their country or playing for the Lions or whatever it is, and gone, well, no, I thought it was fine, and I know they're lying. And this will be interesting because I know whether they're lying or not, because most of the time when someone says something, there's a lot of truth in it.
What are you referring to?
I'm not going to say because I don't want to. All I'm going to say is that something happened, a little while ago, and somebody came out and said something, and it just didn't fit with the narrative, and I didn't say anything because I was too much of a fanny. Because if you burn bridges in rugby, it's such a small world. You never do anything again. You'll never. People are very unforgiving in sport and everything else. And I just think it'd be very interesting to see if my fellow teammates and people agree with what I said, or are going to come out and say, "Oh, fucking Haskell, he's just making up shit and trying to store a story." That's the only thing I'm concerned about. I'm not worried about what anything else is, because I've told 100% the truth.
From Martin Johnson to Stuart Lancaster, when did you last see Stuart?
I can't remember. I don't think I have seen him since. I don't know, since 2015. I don't think.
Really?
I've not spoken to him, not seen him anywhere. I think we played Leinster away, but he didn't come anywhere near me. I didn't see him. Not spoken to him. Not messaged. Nothing. You
get quite stuck into 2015 in the book as well. Do you worry about the reaction? I mean, you've said you've spoken your version of the truth, and there'll always be two sides to every story. But do you worry about people reading it? I'm one of these people that, you get always people in the media who says, "Oh, when people say stuff to me, I don't care. I don't care what people think." Everybody cares what everybody thinks. And my sole objective was not to come after people, was to give a view. And I have been level in all those views. I have said, and I said it here now, there is no doubting that Stuart Lancaster is a lovely bloke. Stuart Lancaster is a good coach, and Stuart Lancaster is extremely hard working. But my observation was he didn't get stuff right on this particular thing. But not just him, just the dynamic, the way we did things, the characters, the players involved, the fact there wasn't really any leadership. Meetings were about meetings, leadership meetings were just about other meetings. There wasn't that encouragement there, and I think that he wanted to create a really sensible brand of English rugby that had all the views, all the links to grassroots and everything else. But that doesn't win you games. When the pressure comes on, the wheels fell off, and I think he made some mistakes in trying to embrace the media. That's what I love what Eddie does. Eddie's fully aware that he's going to get knifed either way, and he doesn't try to do it. And anybody who tries to pander and be friends of the media, especially our rugby media, are going to come out. I mean, I remember, we had media coming in there complaining about the cold bacon sandwiches and slagging everyone off and saying that they'd seen Joe Marler eating chocolate cake and fucking, what has that got to do with anything? It's just nasty media, stupid media. But I think Stuart could have done. More in terms of the dynamic. I think he should have had more characters in the squad. I think the coaching dynamic wasn't quite right. I think there was quite a lot of alpha males. I don't think there was sort of, under Stuart, under Eddie, for example, he's quite alpha. Paul Gustard, this is not my experience, was an alpha guy, but was a real good lad, was compassionate. Steve Borthwick was compassionate. So you had different people to turn to. There was a real harmony. It was clear that Eddie was in charge, and the harmony was built around it. I didn't think that was the case there, and I just think it's a shame, because I also think the British public have got a lot to answer for why they thought in 2015, after we'd never consistently beaten a Southern Hemisphere side, that we were suddenly going to destroy everyone in their own home World Cup. We just hyped ourselves up so much that the fall from grace was insane. I was going to push back slightly. There are some very good people in the media writing some very good things, and the game needs the media for coverage and awareness and selling it, and it's not one cap fits all kind of thing. There are some.
I agree, and I talked about it in the book. It's a game. People who shut down. I played the game best. I love talking to the media. I love it, but I have no qualms about what's going to happen. And I think there are some great journalists out there. I think there are some unbelievable people out there. But I think you just have to look at what happens when stuff comes out. It's how can we sell papers if the narrative's there? It's let's go. You got people looking for problems. You got people, trying to find out. You got players in that 2015 who sold stories on other players. That shit like that happened. There was just little bits and pieces that just eked out, and people were upset. Players are upset, and if you have a really tight bond of an environment and everyone feels comfortable, heard, and spoken to, but that happened, and that's what I think was on the unravelling as well.
Did anybody stick their head above the parapet in 2015 and say, this is going on, this isn't good enough? Or was the environment not conducive to that?
It wasn't conducive to that, but genuinely, and one of my biggest regrets in my career, because I was towards the end of it, and I'd been there for, I've been on my 50th cap or something, 52nd cap, whatever. I really regret not saying anything. But I did try and sit down with a guy called Bill Bezic, the England psychologist. I just said to him, look, I think the communication between players and coaches isn't correct. I think that we're treated a bit like school children. We need to create a bit more element of fun, a bit more element of trust, a bit more player-driven stuff. We need to try to make things, a bit more fun. Like, I'll give you an example, the difference between the two sides. So we lost against Ireland in that Grand Slam game under Stuart. I can't remember when it was, over in Dublin. We went into the changing room. Nobody said anything. The coaches didn't come in, and everybody's sitting around looking for somebody else, feeling down, never going to play again, lost a Grand Slam. You need somebody to point you in the right direction. And so as a coach, you have to put your emotions on hold and deliver that direction. As a captain, you have to stand up. But because Robbo wasn't empowered to do that and wasn't that kind of character, he didn't say anything. No one said anything. And so, but fast forward to Eddie Jones's regime, exactly the same thing happened, exactly the same place. Eddie comes in, smile on his face, lads, we know we weren't good enough. Dylan speaks, and they set the tone and the mood. Nobody spoke to us until we got back we got back on the following day, and everyone was just giving each other stink eye. So, you just come out of the bar, moody and moaning, you get to the airport, lads are all sitting down their own, looking at their phones, probably reading that they should fucking die on Twitter or whatever. No coach has said anything. The coach is looking at you, giving you evil. Everyone's disappointed, but you've got to understand the emotional intelligence of the squad. And that is what they didn't have in 2011 and 2015. 2015, they were so task-focused. Stuart was so task-focused, but not people-focused. And you can't have a good team. You can have the best task, the best structure, but if you don't capture the imagination of the people, you don't get that balance right, you ain't going to have anything. And that's, I think that's the problem.
I'm hoping that next week we're going to have a fairly senior member of the Leinster squad joining us, and I'm very much looking forward to his comparing and contrasting, because, if coaching is a journey, it very much appears that Stuart has learnt from not only his time at Leeds, not only his time with England, but with Leinster, and very much now in the Lions frame.
The Leinster boys absolutely love him.
Yeah,
everybody said, look, and things. Well, I knew Stuart when he was at the Saracens. Everybody raved about him, and he's never been nasty to me. I really respect him. He's a lovely, lovely guy, great family and lovely. The problem is, I think the job's so different. I think when the Saracens, you can be like that. When you're at Leinster, you're just focused on coaching. That's what you're good at. That's what you can do. Stuart was so hell-bent on getting everything from the top, the very grassroots level, to the fact we had to wear St George's crosses on our shirts, to what the local club messages were going out, to what was happening at the top of the RFU, to controlling the media narrative, to give all that and everything in between. It's exhausting. How can you be people-focused if you're always on the task? It just doesn't work. I told you in this book, I say, like, you used to walk past me in the corridor, say hello, wouldn't say anything. Sit down and eat for 10 seconds, literally walk his food and leave. Eddie's like, mate, well, the fact's happening. How's your missus, mate? Like, it's always a conversation. Sits with the boys. That's what breeds the trust. And then if you've got the other dynamics of coaches, it works well. It doesn't make him a bad person. That's my opinion on why I don't think we bonded. Or not bonded, but I don't think the team bonded as it should have done. But can't fault the bloke's effort. And at Leinster, he's been incredible. And no doubt he'll be in the Lions. And no doubt I'll be absolutely proved wrong. But we all learn. I learned throughout my career that not to do things right and how I didn't do them and how I could have been better. And one of my work-ons was having more serious conversations, not being frightened to skirt around the issue and actually sit down and say, this is what's happening.
He asked you the question, what you thought Martin Johnson would have thought post-2011. What would Stuart have said post-2015?
I actually don't know. I genuinely don't know. I didn't knife him. You
were a less prominent part of 2015 in terms of problems.
I mean, I didn't knife him. I didn't think, I didn't say anything about it. I just analysed it from, I do a lot of talks on business and teamwork and management. I read stuff about it. And in my own opinion, it was the balance between task focus and people focus that got wrong. That was my only criticism. And I felt that there was other things that we could have done better. I felt that we were sort of, confined, and he was trying to fit, round pegs and square holes to make it everyone sort of quite vanilla and, England first and all this kind of stuff. But I don't know. I don't know what he said. He probably, I know he much preferred Chris Robson and Tom Wood. I tell a story about the credibility graph, which is basically his way of telling me that, if someone died, I may or may not get a game. But
what was the credibility graph?
I don't want to spoil all the stories. Read about credibility graph. Get to that chapter. It's unbelievable. It was probably the most David Brent moment of my entire career. I'll tell a bit of it, but it's like, he sat me down. So I went to his office, can I have a word? I said, yeah, I can. And he went, can I draw you the credibility? I was drawing the credibility graph, and I was like, looking around for hidden cameras, thinking, is this fucking part of and I went, no, you haven't. So, well, I can. And I was like, you don't have to. Just tell me where I stand. So it does the old axis of like time versus credibility. So there's the time that way, y-axis, and then there's a line at the top where there's the mean line of credible, and a line at the bottom of where you're not credible. And he basically said, for example, someone who's really credible in England, Brad Barrett, right? And then he said someone who's probably lost a few of his chances, is heading towards not credible, Chris Ashton, because he's had a few bans. This graph that was like this and this, it took this long. He drew it so slowly towards the top of it. I was like, are you fucking being serious? It went on and on. It's like, and basically it finished 2 inches like a step ladder at the top. It was like, it ended up like a little ladder at the top. I was nearly credible. Basically nearly credible in the squad. I was like, I've got 50 fucking caps. I've been around England longer than you. And why did you think talking to me like that was going to motivate me? I was going to walk out and go, fuck yeah, I'm nearly credible. This is amazing. I'm definitely not going to tell anyone about this story. All I needed was some understanding, and that's the emotional energy. And the reason I played well for Di Young and the reason I played for Eddie Jones is they understood me. They didn't draw me a fucking graph. The most condescending manner in the world, thinking that was going to really work for me. That's learning coaching, that you can't paint a team with the same brush and treat everybody the same. You can't just go, you shit, work on this, or you're nearly this or nearly that. He didn't know me enough to know that was really demotivating. And as I left the meeting, I just said, it would have been easier if you just said that you really prefer Chris Robson and Tom Wood and don't really trust me, and I've got a lot to work on. But no, I had to have a graph drawn to me.
Were you accessible and were you open to that kind of criticism? I mean, there has to be a reason why coaches will do the things they do. And would you have been perceived at any point as someone that wasn't listening, wasn't interested, thought they knew it all?
Mate, honest to God, right? I got a self-reflection. So I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Coaches have always struggled to understand, how can I be sitting in a room at the table telling stories and talking shit and taking the piss, and then be hardworking when I cross the whitewash? I spent my whole career being the last one out in the training field, doing the extras, paying every week to go for physio, seeing the best nutritionist, speaking to other players, researching, doing everything I could to make the most of the limited talent I had. So there's no way they didn't understand it. And that's why I have gone to all the teams I've gone, and not one coach has come out and said, they wouldn't. You're telling me that Di Young, Michael Checker, Jamie Joseph, Warren Gatlin, Sean Edwards, Eddie Jones, Martin Johnson, and thing would have tolerated if I was like that. And they all picked me and they all played me. Whether they liked me or not, they all did. And they kept me. I was accessible. All I ever needed was someone to understand me and go, actually, if I motivate him and I do it, I would learn. I would want to listen to anything. All I wanted to do was improve. So much so that I spent too much time worrying that I was no good and probably didn't have enough confidence in myself, bizarrely. Yeah, I was always accessible. I just think I've seen it. It's interesting. I've got a post that Stuart did. He talks about the credibility graph, and it basically says that this is the tool he uses. I just think he read it in a book, thought it was a good idea, thought he would, thought it was good management ability, and it just didn't suit me. And I just think good managers understand what motivates their team and doesn't use, jargon and shit, especially with someone like me that I'm just going to walk out there and go, lads, you won't believe what's just happened to me.
I want to talk Lions in 2017 and how you almost killed Rory Best. And we spoke to one of your former international colleagues about being the fire pussy, and we couldn't reveal at that point. We couldn't reveal at that point what the fire pussy was. But I want to know how you killed Rory Best and who and why what the fire pussy is.
So I came down for the morning at 8:30 in the breakfast the day after the last test. We had still 2 days left in New Zealand. And I was sitting down with scrambled eggs and bacon, and Rory Best and Ian Henderson, like Shrek and Donkey, had just come in off the piss, right?
Strong.
So
Lions 2017, for those that don't know.
2017, yeah. And it was like they both got hollow legs. So anyway, they've seen me, they're like, Haskell, do you want a beer? I was like, lads, I'm having scrambled egg and bacon. Like, I haven't thought about this. This is 8:30. They then go, come on then, have a cider. I was like, fuck, you'll give me a cider. So obviously, as soon as it touched my lips, I was like, oh, I'm all over this. And we basically sat at that exact table from 8:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night. Everyone else went to Wahiki Island, and there was about 10 of us that stayed in this room. Joe Marler, me, Dan Cole, Rory Best, Ian Henderson, Jack Knoll, CJ Stander, I think it was a couple more as well. And with a whole pile of free piss that had been left from like a team party. We just sat there drinking all day, talking. By the end of it, we had cardboard boxes. We had all the like, Corona boxes on our heads with holes cut out of it. So much so that, because we always joked that Dan Cole was so negative, he had like a little sad mouth. So every time he looked over. And Rory came up with these ridiculous games, you know, like toothpicks, where you basically just stick a toothpick in your head. And if you stick a toothpick, it will stay. So I look like the guy from Hellraiser with these sticks in my head. And Rory, whenever he said drink, you just had to drink. There was like no skill to it. So we're playing drinking games, but you go drink, you'd have to do it. And because he'd been drinking all day, at one point he did the whole drink thing. And he obviously he had a bit of a reflux or a bit of a bubble. He did like a little sick, like so where it was just froth. But I was like, the great Rory Best, done a little cat sick. So we started calling him Felix. So I was like, come on, Felix, you need to have a little sick. And he's like, fuck off. I was like, come on, Rory. So anyway, Jack Knoll the night before had been slightly worse for wear, and they put like a little hospital bed, camp bed in the team room where he'd slept. So I said, come on, Rory. He says, come on, Felix, you're so old. It's time for you to have a little sleep. He was like, fuck off. I was like, no. So he wheeled in the bed and we said, come on, just get yourself down. Just have a couple of winks. We'll park you by the table. Anyway, so we tucked him into this fold-up hospital bed and basically put his arms at the side, his little bald head sticking out the top. As soon as his head hit the pillow, he just fucking went to sleep. And we're all there with these boxes on our heads, like laughing, sniggering. I was like, we left him there till he was fast asleep. And because where we were was on the ground floor of this Pullman hotel, there was a fire doors. I was like, lads, got to get him out the doors down the street. So we were like, shh, trying to make no noise, but making loads of noise. But Rory didn't wake up. We wheeled this hospital bed out of the lower ground floor. And this was probably about 2 in the afternoon. So there's like, or maybe slightly later, about 4 in the afternoon. 10 lads with boxes on their heads with what looks like a small bored corpse in a bed lying on the street. So we're all laughing, like sniggering, like what we're going to do. And I just went and pushed the bed. But obviously I forgot that where we are in the Pullman Hotel, it goes down to a hill and down to a massive set of stairs and down to the sea. So obviously Rory starts like rolling, picking up momentum. And it's all like funny, lads are doubled over, like, ha. And then obviously it dawned on me that he's heading towards picking up momentum pretty quickly, heading towards what could be certain death. Like, pretty much, you go down the stairs, he's asleep, he's dust. Like, I mean, this could be some horrific injury. So we've all started running down after going, Rory. And what's happened is the camber of the road has sent the bed in towards a bus stop. And obviously it's hit the side. Rory's bolt up. Everyone thought it's an escaped corpse from the back of a hospital bed. He scared all these sort of New Zealand businessmen. Woken up completely discombobulated, and we are honestly dying. And it was a very close call, and probably not our proudest moment.
I love the concept of the best of British and Irish reduced to sitting in a cardboard box, a corpse in a bus stop, and the fire pussy.
I might still save that story for the book. It was
okay.
I saved that one. We've talked quite a lot. I don't want to give too much away, otherwise people won't buy the book.
So I've done the first sort of half a dozen chapters, and what I love about it is and I've forgotten actually, I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, but how long you've been around and how much sort of the old school you got through in the early part of your career. I mean, you have played with not only some of the best coaches, but also some of the most fabulous kind of old school players as well.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not go into too much, but when you look back on your career now, it's here in black and white to be read. You know, it's been a hell of a roller coaster. You've had more scrapes than most. You've played for more clubs than most. You've won more than most. I mean, it's been a pretty of a career of excess, really.
And do you know what the weirdest thing was? Is that apart from the book, because I am like I am in terms of on to the next thing, I got more podcasts and Spotify, I'm doing all these other bits and pieces. I don't really reflect on it. So the book was very cathartic. And I genuinely, when I said at the top of this part of the interview, that I have, I've got 30 stories, 40 stories that I've left out, but just purely by mistake. But one of the biggest things that I enjoyed most was the characters I played with. And I genuinely was disappointed for the lads in my team when I was at top of the tree, when the young ones looking at me and I was the best that they could have, when I had, Lawrence Delalio, Alex King, Simon Shaw, Joe Worsley, Will Green, all these kind of characters, Kenny Logan, all these just mad people. And, in an environment with Warren Gatland and Sean Edwards, probably one of the most colourful characters in the game, making you into machines, treating you like adults, let you go on the piss, but then training you into the ground so that you could be the best you could be. And going to Stade Francais, playing with Sergio Parisse and Julien Dupuis, and having Max, probably my favourite owner of all time, of one of the most flamboyant owners that's ever been. And then, New Zealand, you go there after the scene of the crime in Dunedin, thinking that everyone's going to hate you, but no one gives a shit. And to work with Jamie Joseph, probably one of those inspiring people. And then having, Michael Checker at Stade Francais, Japan, the complete disconnect that Japan has with, the European stuff, so different culturally and everything else. And then obviously going to Wasps, the heartbreak of that, of not finishing where you wanted to finish, that finishing on a really sour note, not winning that Premiership final, which we should have done, and then going to Northampton, the team where 90% of the fans hated me before I even got there. They all thought Saints had spent a load of money on me, and and I was going to be, and it was a big waste. And obviously I was on a very small contract, and being completely embraced by Northampton, being my family, being looked after, loving the club, only getting to play five games, and then failing to make the World Cup. The heartbreak of that. It's been a such an insane roller coaster, but. As I said in the book, I've laughed every single day. I've learned a lot about myself. I know a lot about what makes a winning environment, what doesn't make a winning environment, how to motivate, how to demotivate, what's important culturally, the fact that culture does exist, but it's not something you can put on paper, it's not something you can write down, it's not something you get out of a book. And, I have loved it, and I've won stuff and everything else. But I've interestingly got, hopefully, touch wood, more life to live doing something else than I have playing rugby. But I'm so thankful for it. I've met some incredible people and I've met some amazing friends. And I pride myself on the fact that when you go to the World Cup, like we did in 2019, and you walk into a room and, some of these English players have never met half the lads. We get Marnonu on the show, we get Sergio Parisse on the show, we get Tamati Ellison, all these kind of guys that I've come across. And all I ever wanted to do was make friends, have a laugh, win some stuff, and just live an adventure and be the first person that could tell a story at the table. And I think I might have qualified to do that, maybe.
I remember doing a show with you when you retired, and I can't remember whether I asked you this or not, but I wonder, now that you're out 2 years, any regrets? Anything you changed? Or you just take what it was as it came?
I think I'd have to take what it was. I do regret genuinely not backing myself as much. I genuinely spent so much time trying to work on the areas that I wasn't good at. I should have probably focused on the things that I was good at and enjoyed them and celebrated them. Other than that, no, I don't think I could have done much more. I genuinely, when people look back at it, I couldn't have seen any more trainers, psychologists, reached out to any more people, spent any more time working on my game. I just wish I'd celebrated those moments. I think back to those times where we won a game, and because I was worried about stuff and I knew that image wasn't great, I didn't go out with the lads, or I was so worried that going on the piss might affect my fitness that I would go home early. And those moments are gone now. And now you find them. Now you found them out elsewhere. And I think it's just making sure that players know to celebrate the good bits, because my early days at Wasps, we won so much, but I was so professional and so whatever. I just was always thinking about the next job, always thinking about the next game. I'd go on the piss if I ever did. Wake up the next day, go and do fitness. Me and Doz are running around on the Binfield Football Club thing, spewing, like trying to do fitness, doing all this mad stuff. And it's what made me the player I was, that gave me the career I was. But that's probably the only bit I do regret.
You certainly are a clash of so many parts. You really are. You're a tectonic plate. There's just so much. There's just so much. It's been really interesting. Funny enough, I've actually really enjoyed this, because what I've read of the book, the book is, as I keep saying, it's really, really, really good fun. I haven't got into the deep stuff, but actually your passion and your honesty in where we've gone with this, I hope the book flies. Where can people buy it? All good bookshops?
Yeah, you can get it.
Amazon?
You get it. You can order on Amazon. You can get some signed copies still available on Waterstones. I signed 5,000. They started off as one of 1,000, and they sold out quite quickly. So there's a load of them, I think, that have just been re-released on Waterstones. If they head over to my Instagram at James Haskell, there'll be a link at the top of the page. It's out on the 1st of October. It'll be in WH Smith's as well. It's going to hopefully be everywhere, or it'll be in the bin. But as I said at the beginning, it will hopefully not be pulped and end up being made into a trestle table for battered rugby players. But, we'll see.
We do need to pulp and reprint those. There's a lot of chat about my podcast, The Good, the Bad and the Rugby, and Haskell's co-presenter of the hugely successful Good, the Bad and Rugby. Not a lot of chat about the main presenter.
Sorry.
Maybe that'll be in book 2. Who knows?
Yeah, we will tell some stories, but we'll tell about Japan in book 2.
It's out on October 1st, available in all good bookshops, as we said. Signed ones where you can find them all over your socials. Let's stick something up on ours as well and on our website. I think we've got a few bits and bobs of merch coming quite soon as well. So let's put it in the Good, the Bad and the Rugby shop before so. Just before we go, do you want to fly through our shoot from the lips? You haven't done it yet, have you? And what's your favourite word?
Oh, fuck.
What's your least favourite word?
No.
What was your greatest moment in the game?
My performance in the Premiership final and my performance in Australia when we won it.
What was your worst?
I think it was probably playing for Wasps when I was ill, thinking that I could get through a game and just being absolutely useless, and then just regretting it and not doing anything.
Favourite swear word?
But shit's my favourite one because I always just go, oh, shit. Chloe's like that. What are you talking about? Like, such a shitting idiot. Just stop calling yourself an idiot.
What sound or noise do you love?
Whatever noise you'd get if you're getting paid.
Ka-ching.
Ka-ching, yeah.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Moaning, just people moaning. Just, like...
It's part of the Sappuccino Club, surely.
No, but like in a fun moaning, not like just moaning. Just, getting drilled.
What profession other than your own would you love to attempt?
Obviously, I want to be a professional DJ. That would be the greatest moment, to be like Carl Cox, Nick Fanchuli or Simon Dunmore. I'd take any one of them. I'd actually wish I'd tried to join the army and maybe do like the SAS or something. I don't think I would have made it. I don't have got the mental fortitude, but I really respect them. I've got like a real man crush on like Special Forces soldiers. Is
this a little pitch for Who Dares Wins?
No, I actually got asked to do it. I can't because I can't run. I'm trying to see if I can maybe get to the point where I can, could do it, but I don't know. I'm not sure people need to see me crying on TV, but we'll see.
Back to Japan.
Yeah.
A few tears of Japan. Was that corporate event where you were asleep on the table as people...
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
That's a different story. If you could do a road trip with 3 players, who'd be in the car?
Paul Doran-Jones.
Yeah.
I'd probably say Dylan Hartley.
Yeah.
I'm going to offend so many people now that I didn't. I'd say Danny Kerr, Ellis Genge, maybe, as well.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
I probably missed out on some absolute legends of the game. Like Richard Burke, you could have put in there as well. But I bet it's too complicated. I need a minibus.
Okay. I haven't got time for a minibus. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I just like to go, the champagne halls are ready in the suite. I'm like, thank you, God. You're welcome. I have been a good boy.
We'll stick evangelists alongside those that you've offended, the vertically challenged, the RSPCA and the firearms police. It's been quite a clean sweep tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to The Good, the Bad and the Rugby. Please subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Just tap in Good, Bad Rugby. And please do leave us a review as well. Thank you to all of you who've been doing that. Thanks to the Hoff. Thanks to Tins for earlier as well. What a Flanker is out October the 1st, available in all good bookshops for you. It should be noted, as we mentioned a little bit earlier on, that none of us get a mention in the acknowledgements, despite basically rebuilding Hask's media career over the last 2 years. We'll be back in 7 days' time with another true superstar. We've dropped a little hint, guessing via the social media channels. One of the best players in world rugby over the past decade. No doubt about it. Don't miss that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.